This episode of After Dark is brought to you by Netflix. For a free 30-day trial, head on over to netflix.com/GameBreaker TV.
Gamebreaker TV.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tuesday nights. It's that time again, the time where we open up the lines and talk to you guys on a weekly basis. You guys help make the show by calling in, hitting us up on Skype or Twitter at GB After Dark. So let's get this show started. Joining me like every week, it's the one, the only, Mr. Josh Allen.
Hey.
Hey. Well, that was almost Fonzie-esque, sir.
Hey.
You might need a little bit more hair, or a little bit more gel to hold that hair back, like Fonzie style. Just saying. And then you can go up to a jukebox, you know, hit it, maybe get the Gamebreaker track record to skip to play your favorite songs. Just some advice. I don't know if you want to follow it. All right, this is clearly going nowhere. So let's open up the lines and let you guys save this wonderful, wonderful conversation. So, caller, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name, tell us where you're from, tell us your question, and tell us your favorite food.
Hello, this is Dan Costelli from Bellingham, Washington. My favorite food? I love
toughie,
everything.
I know. It's a toughie.
Like,
That's a real toughie.
I love Indian food. I mean, that's like one of my favorites. Curry. I don't know.
All right. I'll maybe let you get half your question out for that answer, but we'll see. We'll see
Wait,
if I
do you
like
not
it
like
enough.
Indian food? You got something against Indian food?
I do have something against Indian food, strictly over the idea that I used to go over to a friend's house a lot when I was young, and he was Indian, but like it was the type of family that when I went over there, every single time food got forced on me. Now, I'm not necessarily saying having Indian food forced on you is a bad thing, but it left a very bad taste in my mouth when I was like, no thanks, I'm not hungry. And they're like, no, you'll try this. It's really good. Try this. I'm like, no, I'm okay. And they're like, no, it's good for you. It's good for you. You should try. And like, ever since then, anytime I hear Indian food, I just think about that, and it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Why you gotta force it down my throat?
Guys, I'm Mike Shaffnet. I had too much Indian food. White guy problems.
I'm just saying, I don't get it, but that's a whole different show. All right, so let's get back onto the topic of games.
I can't believe you're complaining about free food. Oh my god, you're talking to Italian
right?
too. Wow. Right? Wow. Oh no.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I don't like that. Whatever. I'm not going to win this argument because, yes, I agree. I don't know. I can't believe as a child I was complaining about free food, but what can I say? I must have been anorexic.
Yeah, clearly. That's why you're in a yellow dress.
It's true. That's true. That was my diet so that I could fit into that dress. All right. What do you got for us today?
So my question is that a lot of games I've been playing, their endings feel very cut off and like they just like drop immediately in terms of like endings. Like when you go see like a very long movie and like the ending just completely comes out of nowhere and just shuts it off. And you guys were talking about DLC a lot last week, and I was wondering, like, do you think maybe it's due to like all like the implementation of DLC?
That endings are getting cut off?
Yeah, and then they're just like, or is it just poor writing?
It's tough to say. I mean, you use movies as an example, and I think for one reason is movies suffer from that simply because wrong camera. I meant this one. Movies suffer from that because you're stuck within a specific time constraint. You know, you got nowadays you got about an hour and a half. If you were a big movie, you can maybe push the 3-hour mark, and that's not a lot of time, especially if you're not making a multiple series kind of Lord of the Rings story, and that's not a lot of time when you get down to it. So that's why you could probably see endings come out of the clear blue with that. But I don't feel like video games can use that as an excuse. They're video games. That's why I love story-driven RPG video games is because I don't mind sitting down for 40, 50, 60, 100 hours if it tells me a very good story in the core of a game. That's why I play them. And I think that we touched a little bit about this last week, Josh, about how we think that games are suffering because the business model of development companies are embracing the idea of making the story as a whole completed by embracing DLC, and that shouldn't be the case. DLC should be additional content that we get so that we keep spending time playing that game, not something that adds to the original purchase of the game. That's kind of what we were touching on last week, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Like what we were talking about last week was mostly the idea of when a DLC drops on day one that you need for your first playthrough. That's annoying. It's something that's like, okay, I'm missing out the first time I play this game if I don't have this immediately. That's really, really super frustrating. I do think to some extent the whole endings issue, it doesn't. Part of it is just that like there's been a few games with, maybe the third in their series that have had really, really bad endings in the past year or so. But
Mass Effect.
I think the part.
You can say
exactly.
it. You can say it. We know what you're talking about.
Massive
Diablo
failure 3. But anyway, I do think that there's been a lot of. I do think that no matter what, in a case like that, it's a situation where if you. Man, I'm going to interrupt myself like 10 times before I get this thought out because it's still just kind of forming. But
Nature of a call-in show called Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so there is some element of wanting to leave the player wanting more. I don't remember where this first originally came from, but it's kind of been a long time standing of understanding when you're creating something for entertainment that at the end, if they don't want more of it, then it dragged on too long. If at the end of a movie or a play or a comedy sketch or something like that, if at the end people aren't leaving the theater feeling like, man, I wish that was a little bit longer, then it was too long. Because you've filled them and they're like, all right, by the end of it they're going, okay, is this over yet? Can this be over, please? I'm tired of this. That's the general line of thinking there. You want people to feel like they need a little bit more. So when you play a game or something and you feel like, oh man, but what about this? But what about that? Oh, there's these unanswered questions, etc. That's not always a bad thing. But when it's something where you play through the end and you go, it just stopped. It's just I was playing and now I'm not playing. There needs to be at least some sort of build up to this is where this particular story stops, and that is something that a lot of I do feel like there has been a lot of writing mishaps in gaming in recent times that are related to that. It doesn't matter if there's DLC involved or not. That was a loud noise. It doesn't matter if there's DLC involved or not. It's just a question of did the writers tie into the upcoming stuff properly.
Daniel, what do you think about DLC? Is it something, obviously you kind of had this thought, you have this concern. Are you okay with the current standard of what DLC is setting, or what direction would you take it in?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I haven't really bought much DLC for any games. I think the only ones I really bought were for Assassin's Creed. But I like DLC that kind of explores just other facets of the game universe within that engine within that story. So I think I heard the Mass Effect 2 ones were very good, and then
I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Dragon Age ones did that as well, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Anyone?
I don't know. I don't play Dragon Age.
Yeah,
I don't play
really
many
Dragon Age
BioWare games.
They could have. I feel like they did. It's been a very long time since I've participated, and I think I never purchased any of the DLC. I mostly played the stuff that they gave you for free at launch for whatever reason. But it did feel like stuff that was kind of telling more, or telling something else that was going on at the same time. And it didn't take away from the experience. Now, does anybody know what Dragonborn goes into? Does Dragonborn embrace that philosophy? Because obviously everybody felt a complete experience when they were done with Skyrim.
Yeah, I think that's really the big question is when you play a game do you feel like you got a complete experience out of it? When I played through Mass Effect 2, I felt like, okay, that's the story of Mass Effect 2. And then some other stuff came along, and I was like, cool, I'll check that out too, like the Shadow Broker DLC and whatever, or the what was it, like the Hammerhead thing that you were able to do. There was other DLC that came along that I was like, okay, yeah, I liked this experience, so I'm willing to get more of that experience. But it was a complete experience to begin with. When you get something like Mass Effect 3's DLC, where you have a Prothean frickin' squad member as the DLC on day one, you're like, do you really get a complete story outside of that? And then I guess they eventually came out with a free DLC pack that was supposed to fix the ending or whatever, but it was still terrible at that point. I didn't care anymore. It's when things come out with DLC that is integral to the experience as a whole, to the point that you are not getting a complete experience when you make that initial purchase. If my initial purchase of $50 or $60 or however much it is not complete, and I have to spend more to get the whole story, then that's stupid. And that's when DLC is just abusive more than actually beneficial.
Do you think that the current trend, either of you, do you think that the current trend of DLC is the way that it is because PC and mobile games are adapting, freemium kind of models where there's a potential for higher revenue source, and console games are seeing that and trying to make it not affect console games as much as what we see with mobile games and whatnot, but they still are trying to capitalize on the idea of we release additional content and we get more money because people are clearly willing to pay a substantial amount more for additional content. Is that kind of where this is all stemming from?
See, I don't have a problem with DLC as long as it's not something that feels mandatory. If it's something that like the way the story is written or the way the game plays or something, it's like, okay, if you don't have this DLC, then you're not really playing the game. That's when it's stupid. I don't have a problem with where it's like, okay, well, here's this little extra mission that you can go on that doesn't really have anything to do with anything. It's just more stuff and it's more writing from the same people. That, I think, is important. It's... Yeah, that's pretty much what comes down. I think just the thing is that the average consumer hasn't really caught on to the day one DLC sort of hustle yet. They haven't quite caught on that if they buy a game, they need to find out if there's day one DLC first before they can actually like logistically make that or realistically make that purchase. It just gets it's just something that I think is going to go away over time as more and more people start to realize, well, this game actually costs $90, even though the price tag right now is only like $60.
Sure. All right, well, let's open up the calls again and see what else you guys got for the topic of conversation tonight. Caller, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name. Tell us where you're from. Tell us your question. And I'm going to try again so that I don't strike out. What's your favorite kind of food?
Hi, it's Adrian from Montreal, Canada. My favorite food, I guess, would be Hawaiian pizza.
I was going to go with poutine.
Ha!
My guess.
I don't like Hawaiian pizza either. This is awful.
Man,
this is
what
a horrible.
Is wrong with you?
This is a horrible topic. I shouldn't have brought up food. I'm just going to let it go from here. Cut my losses.
You shouldn't bring up food if you're like ultra picky about stuff. I don't like broccoli, and I don't like salad, and I don't like Mexican. I don't like pizza. I don't like beer, and I don't like Shafton.
I got to agree with Ceylana Deathwing. I don't like hot pineapple. That's just gross. All right, so gaming question. Question. Hey, what do you got for us, Adrian?
Well, you guys were talking about DLC, and Eduardo made me think of like, why don't more game companies release like something like a map creator, something that gives user-generated content, so that like you're not forced to buy DLC. And like you can make content for yourself to enjoy and to possibly share with others, or you can make a DLC that like has, for example, a map creator, and like you can enjoy that for a while, something like that. But
well,
like, why can't more games do that?
Well, and I think that's the true thing here is why can't more games do that? Because we've seen that with a lot of games, specifically, Trials is a very topical answer right now. Look at what people kind of do with Minecraft. We've seen people create mods and how that can kind of keep the community around a game. I think even like Infamous 2 had user-generated content where you could build, you had an unlimited amount of items that you could use to build kind of courses or objectives, and they were great. I think one of the biggest problems with counting user-generated content as DLC is it takes someone a lot of time, a lot of skill, and a lot of intelligence to create something that I think people would put on the level of what they expect even from the worst DLC, because there is a lot of bad user-generated content out there amongst the games that allow it. Again, I'll use Infamous as an example. There were some just awful levels that had no point, no direction, no possibility of getting something. User-generated content is just that. It's user-generated, and it maybe doesn't embrace the design philosophies that the game developers created or came up with when they first developed the game. And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles with that topic that runs into there. What about you, Josh? What do you think?
I think the other thing is that it actually is a really, really significant time and programming investment to actually be able to put together stuff like that. You can't just say, oh, we'll just take our tools and put it in there, because a lot of times they're not even using proprietary tools. They're using something like 3D Studio or Maya or something to make these levels half the time. You can't just package Maya in with a game and say, there you go, have fun. No, you need to come up with something that will be usable for an average person without having to get, because the ease of usability and the flexibility of the level editor itself will lend a lot to the quality of the content that you get out of it. So if you look at something like Trials, we've got basic left to right, and it has a whole bunch of advanced stuff that you can do in there, but at its basics, it's just put stuff on this left to right path, and you can have people ride their bikes over it. So it's really, really simple at the core, expands out into something way more complex from there, but it's really simple at the core, so it's easy for people to get into. But if you look at something a lot more complicated, like, let's see, what would be a good example here? I'll go back to my old Descent 3 days. You go back to Descent levels. There were some really, really freaking good Descent levels back in the day.
So good.
There were a lot of really bad ones that went along with it, because it was really complicated to actually use. And that was in the hardcore days of PC gaming, where there were very, very few people actually into gaming on PCs that weren't, like, serious about actually doing it. Like, everybody knew what video card they were running back then. Everybody knew exactly what the specs of all their PC were back then. Nowadays, half people have a PC, they just go, I just picked it up at Walmart. And that's that thing. So we're talking about an environment where people were naturally a little bit more inclined to be very serious about stuff like this. And there were still a ton of bad Descent levels that was just, I've made an empty room, you guys, and then everybody download my level. So I think that's really a big part of it, is that it's just a major, major investment on the part of the developers to actually be able to create something that can... I mean, look at how much trouble Blizzard has gotten into in the past over the Lua engine that they added for add-ons in World of Warcraft, where you have things like AVR playing the game for you, and Decursive automatically casting spells on the right people back in Classic and such. It's really, really... It's just plain, it's hard. It is not easy at all, and it takes a significant amount of investment time that takes away from or about a development time that takes away from something else somewhere else. Like, you could have user-generated content, or maybe you could have had 10 more levels just by default in the game.
All right, this next episode, or this next section of Eduardo's Corner is brought to you guys by Netflix. For a free 30-day trial, head on over to netflix.com/GameBreaker TV. That's right! We need like some sort of diddly. Here we go. Eduardo's Corner! That's right. It's your time for everybody's favorite caller, Eduardo from Mexico. Eduardo, how you doing?
Hello, chap. I'm fine.
Hey.
And you? Hey, yo.
I've been pretty good. Been pretty good after I schooled you on Kingdom Hearts last week. Let's just remember that for a second. All right?
Yeah.
All right. Good. Good. I saw you say something in chat. I completely forgot what it was, but it was something regarding... I forgot.
Devil May Cry?
Yes, that was actually what I wanted to talk to you about for a quick second. Let's take a break here from questions. You actually said that you tried the new Devil May Cry, and you're okay with the new representation of Dante.
I'm not only okay, I love it.
Wow, that's strong. What do you feel about the people whose concerns were the fact that it broke the identity that Capcom had built? There are people trying to file a lawsuit, for crying out loud, about the idea that Capcom changed the identity of Dante, and people were trying to file a lawsuit with this, I believe, Supreme Court, saying that the intellectual property that they came to know and love was taken away.
Oh, well, it's probably because they don't remember that the old Dante was already very ridiculous and gay looking.
I think a lot of people will disagree with that, but I don't know. I've yet to pick up DMC myself. As much of a fan as I was, I told myself I would not make judgment based on Dante's appearance and Dante's demeanor. That meant nothing to me, but I watched a lot of reviews on the game, and I personally, and tell me what you think from experience, I hated the script. It seemed like they took the concepts of Devil May Cry, and honestly, maybe they just told you too much. Maybe they really came out and showed you just how kind of ludicrous and childish the Devil May Cry story timeline was, but it seemed like they went too far, and they made it a little less mysterious of who the character of Dante really was, about how he was a seraph and he's sent by the gods to save the world, and like all this extra stuff wasn't needed. He was just kind of this ambiguous dark hero who was killing demons because he didn't agree with them. Like, did you feel that at all when you were playing?
Well, I felt like they were Japanese writers trying to figure out how to make a hero appealing for Western audiences, and they made a hero who tries to be a hero, but he looks like a jerk. And the new Dante is a jerk who knows he's a jerk, and he's just an a-hole the whole time.
But that's your typical anti-hero, storyline. We have. We'll bring up Gary's obsession with Breaking Bad, about how Breaking Bad is kind of the story of an anti-hero. You're kind of rooting for the wrong guy or rooting for the asshole in the situation. And that's kind of what Dante has always been. I think they just maybe painted it a little bit more. I don't know, but there you guys go. Eduardo is actually a fan of the new Devil May Cry, and maybe you guys should go check it out.
Of Breaking Bad too.
Oh, yeah, I'm in the process of watching it right now, so don't spoil anything for me. All right, so let's get to your question. What do you got for us tonight?
Okay, I have a question for you, Shabned. So, what is your favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time?
I had a Twitter question like that. Maybe that was you as well. Go ahead. What was the other part?
I said no. I didn't.
Oh, it wasn't you.
No.
Well, Josh, but before I steal, I just talked about Devil May Cry. Josh, have you at all had are you a Zelda fan? Have you gotten a chance to play multiples? Do you have a favorite if you have?
Favorite Zelda?
Yeah.
Not really.
All right. Well, all right. Here goes another Mike Shabner.
I don't have a particular favorite.
No, that's fine. So, all right, Eduardo, then let's talk Zelda, you and me here. Let's go. Honestly, it's a cliche answer that Ocarina of Time is the best Zelda of all time, but it honestly is. I think they took a lot of what embraced The Legend of Zelda and it was really refined there. It was the first real magical experience where they gave us a lot. That being said, there's a lot in there that are really good outside of Ocarina of Time. Majora's Mask specifically, I think, is brilliant. The idea of creating a game that has a schedule that you can actually affect, and they do this successfully because there's only 3 days to the game, and you repeat these 3 days over and over, and based on who you interact with and the what you bring to the table, you can literally change the course of that person's 3 days to be something completely different. And that is so I fully plan on playing it within the next couple months. It's on my list of games to play. I wish I would have appreciated it the first time through because I loved it. Another two series that stick out significantly in my Legend of Zelda history is Oracles and Seasons. I don't know why. I don't think I like Seasons as much as Ages, but I think part of the reason I liked Ages is the same reason that I liked Ocarina of Time. When you have a storyline that can affect a great period of time and make you feel like you're influencing the world, much like I said with Majora's Mask, there's attachment there. In Ocarina of Time, we got to grow up with Link. We got to struggle through the childhood with him and then see him turn into an adult and turn around and try and save Hyrule. That was our journey as much as it was his, that the other Zeldas don't really represent as well as they do in Ocarina of Time. Same thing with Oracle of Ages is the idea of being able to go back in time to affect time, to go and solve the puzzle in the future. I liked that dynamic of going back and forth and having that ability to do so. It was much like A Link to the Past and going back and forth between the Dark Realm or the Sacred Realm or the Dark Realm and the normal realm. What else? Wind Waker, I didn't get a chance to play and appreciate. I think I played it too young to appreciate what it was. And I hated it while I was playing, and I loved it after I was done, after I could look back on the experience that it was. Skyward Sword, I think the two weakest ones that I really dislike are Skyward Sword and Zelda 2. And I think everybody will agree with me that Zelda 2 was just an awful incarnation. Eduardo, do you ever have a chance to play the second Zelda? The Adventures of Link? Maybe?
I think you're all on your own now.
We are, well, he's reconnecting. We'll see if we can't get that. Oh, there he goes. Yep, I am on my own. So I'll just wrap this up then, because I've already talked a lot about DMC and Zelda. I think A Link to the Past obviously had its struggles, but at the same time, I've got to also give a lot of love to the very first one, made it in '87. The Legend of Zelda, as that was the first. That was my introduction to games. I still have. And I think I've said this before, the graph paper of the maps for each dungeon that my mother made and gave to me to play through the game. That was my introduction to gaming. And I think for that reason, it'll always have a place in my heart. And so that's kind of the whole Zelda spectrum there. I'm ignoring a couple of the smaller titles like Four Swords Adventures and Spirit Tracks and all that other crazy stuff. Unfortunately, we've lost Eduardo, so that's going to bring a close to Eduardo's Corner. But guys, for a free 30-day trial, be sure to head on over for a free trial of Netflix, be sure to head on over to netflix.com/GamebreakerTV, and Eduardo's Corner will hook you up with that. All right, let's open the lines back up here. Keep this show moving. Maybe get Josh back in the conversation. Caller, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name, tell us where you're from, and tell us your question.
Hi, Andrew. Salt
Andrew.
Lake City. Favorite food, lasagna.
Favorite food, lasagna. I like that one. I'm okay with that one, so we're good. I'm 1 for 3. Oh wait,
All
Eduardo,
right.
I didn't ask Eduardo.
All right,
So
so my
you're
question
too busy
is,
asking him about not his question.
It's true. That's true. That's very true. I went on like a 5-minute rant about DMC with him. All right, so what do you got for us?
all right, so my question is, how long do you think it's going to be until we see an MMORPG with true action combat? Not this silly stuff that Terra has come out with, and even Guild Wars 2. They keep limiting the speed of combat and stuff. When are we going to get a true action combat MMORPG? What do you guys think?
We actually also have this question from Geth88 on Twitter. He said, I really enjoyed the combat in Kingdoms of Amalur. What are your thoughts on an MMO was made with Kingdoms of Amalur type combat? So I'm assuming kind of the same idea, the idea of like a God of War combat, a Devil May Cry, action RPG combat with an MMO.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're after?
Yeah, exactly.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah.
Where do you think we sit with something like that?
I think it's just a matter of everybody that's tried to make an action MMO lately has been completely retarded. Yes,
Wow.
I'm still mad about Terra. Sorry. I'm just mad about it. No, Here's the thing, and I see lots of people in chat saying this too. A lot of people feel like the latency issues in an MMO make it so you can't do that. That was true 8 years ago. Look at PlanetSide 2 now. It's a first-person shooter. It's responsive. It's good. And you can have like 200 people versus 200 people all on the screen at the same time. It's pretty massive. So I honestly think that there's no reason we shouldn't have something like that so far. I think it's just that nobody's gotten around to actually doing it. WildStar's combat may be something along those lines. I'm really, really hoping that it is. Firefall's combat is a little bit, it's still more of a shooter, but you can do kind of a third-person shooter thing. I'm just sitting, I'm right there with you guys. I'm sitting here waiting for someone to come up with a game where you don't plant your feet and cast an entire animation whenever you want to do anything and call it Action MMO. That's annoying to me. I want that really, really fast pace, like we were just talking about Devil May Cry, God of War, other similar games with the brawler beat-em-up style. I really, really desperately want an MMORPG that works like that.
Here's my concern with that, though, because I got asked the same question. I was playing Kingdom Hearts. I was streaming it. Someone asked me, hey, Kingdom Hearts MMO based around the Keyblade Wars. And at first I was like, oh, why not? But then I started to think about it, and we've talked about how the Elder Scrolls game, Elder Scrolls Online, is going to have issues with the God complex. And what games are going to have more of an issue with the God complex than action RPGs trying to be MMOs? Devil May Cry, God of War, Kingdom Hearts. All of these games embrace the idea of you can juggle an enemy to death and survive on your own to no end. It's almost impossible and potentially unfair to NPCs or enemy players if you give a player the ability to be so action oriented that they're self-sustaining to the level that we currently see in action RPGs. Maybe not action MMOs, but in action RPGs, that's why they're so fun, is because you're a one-man wrecking train. And I think that's where the issue is. That's where the problem is. They can't give one player all of that ability. Otherwise, they're going to run into balancing issues.
Why not? What balancing issues? I don't see a problem with allowing some. If we're not, as long as it's not PvP combat, because even in something like Devil May Cry, God of War, etc., you come across bosses, right? You come across other things that are really tough and also take you. In fact, they're tougher than you are. I think it would be completely and totally reasonable to say, okay, there's a whole bunch of NPCs in this room. I can just walk into it and cleave all the way through them. Kind of like the same sort of feeling as if you were to go into a low-level dungeon or something like that. You can eventually die if you pull way too much or you screw something up, and the action-oriented combat would play into that as well, where if you're just not executing you're not going through everything properly, if you're not, if you're just standing there, they'll beat up on you eventually. I think it's completely and totally doable. I don't see a reason why you can't put 5 other players in there and you're all cleaving through the dungeon.
What about the idea?
Warframe is another one that comes to mind. Warframe is something, and it kind of builds on the ideas that Mass Effect multiplayer did as well, where you'll have these giant hordes of people coming in, and again, it's more of a shooter. For whatever reason, the industry's gone in that direction instead of the more action combat direction. But it's another thing where you'll have tons and tons and tons of enemies coming at you, and you just cleave through them with your friends right there too, and you're all just sort of cleaving through them, and it's a lot of fun.
So it has to be, it strictly has to stay a PvE experience. A multiplayer action, because then we're just looking at a multiplayer action RPG, which is like the new God of War game, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure what's going on with the new God of War game, but okay. There would be 2 different environments. They would do, when you're doing like a PvE dungeon, you would be doing the standard action RPG. I am way better than everything around me, and me and my friends are cleaving through everything. In a PvP environment, then it would slide back into, well, everybody's kind of on equal footing, and that's when it would come down into a play style of who's actually better at playing the game and using the action combat, which would also be really fun. So I don't see a problem.
What about, you talked about the idea of going through and cleaving through something with friends. What about the idea that, I don't, this is an excuse that people use, but do you think that would become too mundane and boring for players? Like, yeah, sure, it's fun. You're running through a dungeon, endlessly juggling mobs and making it fun. And that'd be fun for X amount of time. But after a while, when you're just like, when I'm playing some action RPGs, I can literally just sit there and hit A maybe a trigger or two. I can play with one hand. Can that negatively affect the way that you're playing the game? Because we already talk about how people are bored with repetition and not having exciting and new content. And if you're talking about making it something that's easy enough to be the action RPG and cleave through people, then where's the difficulty? Where's the thing that keeps the player not only playing over the life of the game, but keeps them coming back?
Ask the same exact question of the action RPGs you're talking about. What is it that brings you back? Well, because A, it's actually fun to play. It is fun to get the whole God complex thing going and cleave through stuff. Doesn't matter if there's somebody else there also doing that. I think it's fun to be cleaving through things. Like the same thing will happen in like a game like Path of Exile or Diablo 3, where you'll be cleaving through things like crazy, and it doesn't matter that there's other people there with you. You're all cleaving through things like crazy, and it's fun to go through.
But is the shelf life for those games shorter? Look at God of War. I mean, again, these are all console single-player games, so they don't necessarily compare to an MMO, but I feel like because of that, they know, like you were talking about, of knowing when a game should end and leave you wanting more. If it's something like an MMO where you continue to play, is the shelf life of that MMO for the player much shorter because of that?
MMOs have been doing dungeons for years. Hasn't been a problem until now. I mean, you can't really... I don't think there's really much room to say that going through Shadowfang Keep in World of Warcraft is any more interesting. It's fun to go through stuff. It's fun to kill mobs, and yeah, it's just fun gameplay. I think that's all it really needs to be. If you're enjoying the experience, then who cares what anything else is about it?
All right, well, let's move on to another caller and keep the show rolling. Caller, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name. Tell us where you're from. Tell us your question. And don't tell me your favorite food, because I just want to come out ahead. I like the last one. I'm good.
3-1, coming out ahead.
I was going to say Hawaiian pizza with Indian food on top.
You would.
Hawaiian pizza with curry.
Yes.
That sounds awful. Sounds awful. All right, what's your name?
Speaking of WoW dungeons, I actually was playing Vindictus earlier. I was thinking, why not like a splash screen at the end of a LFG run, like showing like different types of stats, because they have a lot of stats they keep track of. WoW in general. Why not have a little splash screen once you complete the dungeon?
As if recount spammers in LFR aren't bad enough. Let's give them a splash screen at the end of the dungeon.
Well, that's the thing. It's like also WoW has adopted a lot of different add-ons. Plus, I'm not saying like just DPS meters in general, but like different loot types of what you receive. Also, just like a battleground splash screen. At the end of the battleground, you see who did more damage, like maybe who got the last kill on different mobs, or who killed the most mobs, or healing done, or damage taken, just stuff like that. And yeah, I know what you mean with the recount add-on spam. I hate those guys too, but just maybe like a different stat, like who generally quits dungeons a lot or something, like, or it just I don't know, just the different stats. I just thought it would be interesting for the LFGs, maybe to keep people interested in continuing through the dungeon instead of just killing that one boss and then leaving.
Sure. Well, Josh, I mean, I guess that's a really good point. Is first off, is there enough time in groups right now and in dungeons for Blizzard to spend the time developing a system like this? And then B, if they did take the time, do you think this, as we kind of talked about, is this something that would keep the player interested of staying to the end to see this kind of splash screen or other ideas of kind of trying to keep people up to date with the dungeon scene?
I think it's a really interesting idea. It's a good idea at the core. The question is, what would they put there, and would they butter the biscuits? And
no.
Would they? Yeah, they might not. Would they put it there in a way that is something that people will abuse? Because if they just put something in like LFR, where it's like, okay, this guy did the most damage, then everybody who was below him, he's going to be like, I beat everyone, and you're just going to invite people to be assholes in LFR again. Not that they don't do that right now, but at the very least, right now, it's it's a little bit rarer than if it was every single run every time. Like the last few LFRs I've been in, nobody's even ever bothered to link recount. So I think, man, I got sounds happening all over me all of a sudden. Yeah, exactly. But I do think there are important questions of what do you put in there, or do you put anything in there? Is it something related to your particular performance or not? I kind of feel like with LFR, how it is nowadays, it's kind of important for things to not be quite like that, but maybe a personal scoreboard or something would be good. Something that pops up that says, here's how you did, not necessarily who did the best. Or maybe it's something that only shows who did the best and what your score is and doesn't list anybody else, so that you don't have people going down and looking at the bottom list and going, I did the blah, 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 whatever. I do think that there is a problem in World of Warcraft right now where a lot of people will underperform and not realize that they're underperforming because there isn't really any way for them to know that. They're pushing their buttons. They're just like, oh, well, if I do less damage, it must be class balance or something like that. And they don't realize that there's something that they could be doing to do more damage. So I do think that there's a lot of room for something like that in there. I just think it needs to be implemented in a way that doesn't promote people pointing fingers at other people for being bad.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of even have trouble trying to come up with an idea that doesn't, and I mean, it's tough to say. It's tough to say. I don't know. Let's go.
I do think if it was just like a personal scoreboard thing with maybe like a show who the best, like show the couple of numbers on who the best one. Well, like if you're a healer, then at the end it gives you a healing scoreboard. Here's the person who did the most effective healing or something like that, which again is a metric that doesn't mean anything a lot of the times. But at least for DPS, it might work. I don't know. There's a lot of issues with the idea that would have to be solved, but I do think it's an idea worth investigating a little bit.
I don't know. The development on time on that alone just sounds like a ridiculous amount. Maybe worth investigating, but kind of in its current incarnation that we're talking about, I think that would be a lot of development time that could be better utilized elsewhere. But that's just my personal opinion. Let's open up the lines and take another caller. Caller, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name. Tell us where you're from. Tell us your question.
Evening.
Good evening.
Dustin.
Ooh,
and I.
This is like a radio voice here. Good evening.
Thank you. I'm from Florida. My favorite food is oranges because we got a lot of that down here.
Yes. I got an orange tree in my backyard and I love them. 2 for 5. 4. I don't know. I lost count. Go ahead.
Anyways, my question is, recently I played The Old Republic for the first time since it went free to play. And I very quickly noticed that they wanted $5 just to unlock my head slot. Didn't really like that too much. Compared to Terra's free-to-play model and Guild Wars 2 buy-to-play model, do you think EA is learning anything from its competitors? Could they be changing their free-to-play model in the future? Especially with more games like WildStar coming out. I believe they're going to be free-to-play. Just interested in your opinion, especially Josh Allen.
Josh has got a lot of good opinions when it comes to EA and is very vocal about his disdain for the current Star Wars model. So I will definitely let you take this one, Josh.
Is EA learning things for... No, they're quite the opposite. They did not learn a thing when they made their free-to-play model, and that's why it's so terrible, because they did not look at any of the other not perfect, but also way better free-to-play models that are available right now.
What about...
No, that's a mess.
Do you think that they're learning from what is going on right now since they've gone free to play and they see that maybe it's not, and I don't have the actual metrics, but if it's not performing as they anticipated and they're looking at all these other models, do you think there's a chance they might say, why isn't this working?
I really hope that EA does wise up soon to stop being like right now. Everything that EA does is very much clearly targeted at the point of let's wring as much money out of our customers as possible. And a lot of obviously creating games is about making money. That's a huge part of it. In order to run any business, you have to make money. But they seem to be more about making the money than actually like creating good content, which is where the key difference falls in. It's possible to make money while also making something that players will enjoy doing. EA seems to be focused mostly on making money. And I hope they figure out that will not work long term. I hope it doesn't work long term. I hope that people start to not buy into it as much. Just because that's dumb, right? Like it's no fun to have content coming out that's just abusive and you feel bad unless you spend money. So and then you feel bad after that because you spent money on something that you don't feel like you should have been paying for. So I do hope that they learn, just because it's never good to have bad games come out. I would love for EA to be producing quality content that I could play and enjoy and have a lot of fun with without feeling like I'm getting nickel and dimed. I would love for that to happen, and I hope they do learn something and turn around, but it's going to take some time for that to actually start to manifest if it is the case.
I'm trying to think of what they could do to change their current model, but and even like slight changes without completely rethinking it. But I had some friends that were playing next to me, and one of them I think was like 2 or 3 levels higher. He's like, oh yeah, you sprint, and he's like, oh, I don't have sprint yet. He's like, no, you should have already gotten sprint. And I guess they gated sprint where if you pay for it, you get it at like level 10, but if you don't, you get it at like level 13, 14. Like, seriously? I've got to pay to unlock sprint early?
Yeah, no, it's a terrible free-to-play model.
I just don't get it, and I agree with you on their issues of they need to embrace the idea. You talk about this with when you compare it to something like League. They need to embrace the idea that people playing their games is an asset, because even if that person doesn't pay, they might introduce someone who does, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on that issue. Mm-hmm. Let's open up to the lines one more time, and I guess not one more time, but again, and get some more calls on here. So call, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name, tell us where you're from, tell us your question.
How's it going, guys? It's Kerry from Riverside again. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Stop. Pretty good. Favorite food, by the way, is Western bacon cheeseburgers with waffle fries.
Can I just say I like it because of burgers? I like burgers, but I don't think I've ever had a Western.
This show is making me really hungry.
I'm gonna have to go home and cook.
I was, no, just go out and get.
I'm 3 for 5. I am ahead in this game. I'm 3 for 5. We're gonna keep going with this.
Right. Okay. All right. Anyway, my question for the night is actually kind of a weird one. I don't know how current you guys are with how Sega is with the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
I'm aware they're still releasing games. That's about it.
Well, the current entries have been pretty good. Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations were actually really good steps in the right direction.
Was Generations the one that let you play it in either 3D incarnation or 2D incarnation?
That's correct. You played as Sonic from the past in the 2D incarnations, and the modern Sonic for like the high speed levels that they introduced in Sonic Unleashed.
Gotcha.
Now, I was wondering if you guys were kind of on, like, do you guys want to see Sega shift back into like the classic gameplay, or do you guys want to see them build more upon what they built with Generations and Sonic Unleashed and all that other stuff?
Gosh, don't even get me started on how much I'd like to see developers go back to the way games used to be. But I think the way games used to be have run their course. And as much as I would like them to be what they were growing up, the game, in a literal sense, the game has changed. The way we play games, the way we accept games, the games we like are no longer as difficult. They're no longer as simple. At the same time, I don't know how that makes sense, but it does. They can't take a step back, and it's specifically with the Sonic franchise, go back to a side-scrolling 2D adventure game with 3 continues. It just doesn't work like that anymore, and I don't think that can be embraced. I agree with you. I think they're with Generations, they were taking the right step. They were taking the embrace and capturing the old Sonic lovers to be able to go and play the 2D experience while still capitalizing on their newer franchises and kind of trying to give something new and exciting, and kind of maybe even introduce the older players to the new generation of Sonic so that they can continue with it. Josh, on the idea of just not even Sonic, but I guess I'm gonna broaden this up into the idea of older video games embracing something new, or do you think that older games should keep trying to release stuff that was that way? It just doesn't. I don't think it really makes sense anymore.
Here's the thing. First off, I think platformers are still fine. I think a side-scrolling platformer can still work. We've seen games like Bleed came out recently. That was a really good one. Super Meat Boy, games like that. I think platformers are still fine. I think I don't think there's a particular problem with saying, well, the side-scrolling, fast-paced platformer just can't work anymore. No, I don't think that's true at all. I think something like that could totally work. They tend to be a bit more hardcore nowadays. They tend to be a little bit more about, oh yeah, I'm going to be really, really, really difficult. They tend to crank up the difficulty a lot. But it still happens a lot, and you still see games like that a lot. The other thing, though, that I wanted to point out regarding Sonic, crap, and I just closed it. There we go. Is that they actually have been releasing very, very original style Sonic games. This is a screenshot. They've been releasing Sonic games very, very much like the originals on mobile platforms.
Are those the episode ones? But the episode ones?
Yeah,
I've heard bad things about those. Honestly, though, and I don't know. Have you had a chance to play them?
I haven't played it. I haven't played them yet.
I've heard they're short for the one thing. People hate how short they are.
Yeah, if there's a complaint about them, it would probably be the price. I know that Sonic CD came out on mobile platforms also. They sort of re-released Sonic CD because that was a Sonic game that a lot of people never even got a chance to play because they didn't have a Sega CD.
Sonic Spinball, sir. I got that on my iPhone.
I played the hell out of Sonic Spinball. That game was
awesome.
But if there would be a complaint about the Sonic 4 episode series, it would probably be the price. Since I'm getting my fingers tangled in my hair here, that's fantastic.
You might want to get that cut. Take a cue from my world and
I actually have a hair appointment next week sometime to get taken care of. But yeah, what was this? Oh yeah, if there's a complaint about the Sonic 4 episode series, it would be the price because it is $3.99 for the first episode, and I think it was actually $4.99 for the second episode. And if they are short, that would be really, really frustrating. But they do still exist. I think mobile platforms are a great source for platformer games like that nowadays. Look at things like Meganoid or League of Evil. There's just so many good mobile platformers available nowadays. It's pretty awesome, actually.
How do you feel? Because I picked up Sonic 1 and 2, even Spinball, and my biggest complaint with those games on the mobile platform was the touchscreens. They are awful for trying to play a platformer.
It can be done. I've played games where it worked well. League of Evil, it worked really well. Meganoid, it works really well also. It's really just a matter of the developers creating a touchscreen interface that doesn't suck, and then also not putting things in the area of the screen where you can't see because your thumbs are there. You can also get things like the Moga controller. I've got one sitting over here. Stuff like that, which you just sort of lock your phone into. And if a game supports it, then something like that can work too. And they've actually got a new version of the Moga controller coming out sometime soon that I'll be interested to check out. But I think it's totally doable. It's just a question of, are people going to pick up on it? And I can't really predict that one too well.
All right, let's move on to another caller. Caller, you're on the line with Gamebreaker After Dark. Tell us your name, tell us where you're from, and tell us your question.
Hey, Rick from Texas here again.
Yo, yo.
And I just want to know...
Go ahead. No, hang on. Let's go. Let's just keep going with it. Favorite food. Might as well. Everybody's done it. Favorite food.
I'm going to have to say cheesecake.
Ooh, good choice.
Can I take a half?
Do you not like cheesecake?
Not really. I'll eat it, but I don't really love it. I like cake. I like normal cake. Sweets and icing, please. Not cheesecake. I'll eat it.
They're not the same thing at all.
They're not. But I'll take cake over cheesecake every time. I don't like
cheesecake. I prefer hamburgers.
All right. I'll take a hit for that one. I'm 3 for 6. Hopefully this last caller will redeem me. All right. What's your question?
Why no A-list anymore, man? What happened?
I've gotten this a lot. Now I'm getting called out for it. Time. Time is the biggest issue with the A-list. I'm assuming you're an anime fan to ask me that question, correct?
Not really. I want to know more about it. And I've watched the shows you recommended on A-list. There's no more. That
is the worst thing you could do, is make me feel guilty. Welcome
to internet content creation, Mike.
It's so hard. It is so hard. Here's the thing, and I really want to. I do. Just to give you guys an idea, obviously with Soul, I'll use Soul Eater as an example, which is pretty tame. I think it was 40-ish episodes, 30, 40 episodes. obviously, got to sit there and watch every half hour. Exponentially makes that bigger. On top of that, then I got to capture. I've got to, you know, I'm trying to find sound bites. I've got obviously the writing. I don't want to say it's so much work, but there's a lot of time that goes into creating one episode that I didn't think I could keep up with it on a consistent basis. And the one thing I've learned since stepping into the internet community is consistency is number one for a show. And if you can't stay consistent with it, you can't gain the viewership on it. And that was my biggest fear with it. That being said, I'm just spouting off a lot of excuses, but that is still my biggest concern is I couldn't keep up with the production time.
It's completely and totally true. That's the same reason that I don't do APM anymore. It's because even though I loved the show, it was really great. I really loved putting it together. It takes a lot of time to do something like that. You see other people coming out with top 5, like IPL does a top 5 series. They'll have multiple people working on that, at least 2 people, right? So at least 50% of the workload that'll work on something like that. And they do like top 5 plays, so it's just one clip from a game. Whereas with APM, I was actually like recapping the entire matches, which was what a lot of people liked about the show. But it also meant that it was a lot of work to actually get it done. And that was, I can produce 1 6-minute episode of APM per week, or I can put out like an extra, like since then I've added on an extra episode or extra show for Tank Spot, PST Rapid Fire. Plus I've also got Just the Tip now. Plus I've got other shows here on Gamebreaker, like After Dark. Plus I've got all this other stuff. It was like this one show not doing that freed up time for me to do so much other stuff that I was like, okay, even though this show is great, even though I love doing it, I can't be spending that much time on just one thing. It's mismanagement of time to actually do something like that. So,
and I think
really
for
frustrating,
me,
but yeah,
it's extremely frustrating. I think for me, I do have a general, and then there was one other side of it is I started doing a lot of research into other shows because I wanted to figure out how they did it. I ran into the production issue and I was trying to figure out how to make it shorter and come up with something easier, because that was my solution. Come up with something that's quick to produce, is low maintenance on the editing side, and be able to put it out. But as I started researching other shows, this is a horrible like excuse, but I felt like there were so many better sources than myself. I do love anime, but there are some serious anime sources out there that have just 10 times better shows than I was able to produce in the week and a half I think it took me to make the Soul Eater episode. Or maybe it was the Full Metal Alchemist one. I want to keep doing it. I've got to find an easier way to make it. I do love that show, and I love that I got a lot of people telling me they loved the show. I've just got to find an easier way, a quicker way to make it. Let's open up the calls to the last caller and get this decided. I don't even care about where you're from or your name. Favorite food, go. Wow. You are the deciding vote.
Wow, so nice to meet you too.
Oh, is this your first time calling? Now I feel really bad.
My first time calling for sure.
Ah. All right. Take it all back.
Maybe
tell us your
you
name.
should care about people more, Mike Shaftnit.
Tell us your name. Tell us where you're from.
My name's Corey. I'm from Pasadena, California. My favorite food is seafood.
No!
Do you not like... What do you like, Mike Shaftnit?
I don't know, but I don't like seafood.
How have you not starved to death from your sheer hatred of all things edible?
I'm close. I'm close. I'm close to starving to death.
Nourishment?
But seriously, Mike Shaftnit, what is your favorite food?
That's a paper towel, and it does not taste very good. I don't even know off the top of my head what's my favorite food. My favorite food. I really like tacos, but no, lemon pepper chicken. That's that. I had to think for a second. Lemon pepper chicken. I love it. I cook it all the time, and I make it so good. I love lemon pepper chicken. So I'm even. Mine goes in there, and I'm even. I'm 6 out of 12. That is right.
But you counted what you like as on the list of people you agree.
That counts. All right. Let's get this last call out and move on.
All right, so with the flood of video games we've had over the last 2 years or so, everyone's trying to get their hand in the pot, and a lot of genres have mixed to create little niches for independent companies trying to make their money. Do you feel there is still a new genre out there that hasn't been tapped into either at all or just barely?
My gut reaction is no, because in the film and entertainment world, they say there is no original idea. To an extent, I think to an extent, I think that's true. I think there is no original concept or idea anymore, but that doesn't mean you can't come up with something original that's still kind of based off and is similar to something that's already been done. I think Inception was a great example for movies. Now, games, I know specifically. Go ahead, Josh.
Here's the thing about originality. There's no such thing as something that's completely 100% original. Nobody, like, you don't, that's just not how the human brain works. You combine different ideas, and from that idea, you will be inspired to do something else. You won't just randomly out of nowhere be like, you know what? A fish stick simulator. Simulating life as a fish stick. Fantastic. By the way, Mike, do you like fish sticks?
That counts as seafood. Fish.
All right.
It has the word.
So
it has
like
the word.
stick.
It has the word fish in it. Actually, I don't know. I haven't had fish in a long time. Anyway,
no, the thing is, there's still games that I think can be an original idea. I think there's still stuff that can be an original concept, and games can still be fun. There's still plenty of room for innovation in gaming, for sure. It's just everything kind of, everything comes down to everything is just a sum of its parts, more or less, if you look at it from that perspective. If you look at any game, you can sit down and go, okay, well, this is just basically that. That's just basically that. Well, there you go. This game is just Mario Brothers again, which Mario Brothers was just something, it was just Pong with side-scrolling, right? And then Pong was just ping pong on a computer screen. So you can just kind of distill everything down into a construction of its baser ideas. But then you'll still see games like Minecraft come out, where the whole idea of a block world that you build everything in, everything is destructible, everything can be built on, that wasn't something that we'd seen a lot in the past before. Something like point-and-click adventures have been coming back recently, and a lot of those have been pretty cool and innovative for point-and-click, especially on mobile devices, where they're actually starting to really be more like a touch thing the whole time. It's actually really cool. You see all the games like Don't Starve is another one. There's a lot of innovation in Don't Starve. Sure, it's just basically a top-down, like semi-action simulation game, but that's a combination that people hadn't done before. It was a really cool idea, and it's been a pretty successful game so far. I just think that basically what I'm saying here is I think that looking at things from the perspective of what is this game really? Let's break it down into its core parts is just unhealthy. It's better just to look at games and say, is this something that tickles my fancy?
Here's the 2 cents I've got on it is you got to think about original ideas, shows, games, anything. Coming up with an original idea or even a somewhat original idea is never an easy task. But it's always funny because when you do, when that idea surfaces, you always have this moment of being like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? That makes perfect sense. And that's how you suddenly know you've come on to something that's not necessarily new, but it's kind of that new genre or that new show or that new idea, whatever it might be. It always is kind of, that's the most simplest idea that you sit there and you just beat your head against the wall under the idea of why didn't I think of that?
Mm-hmm.
That does it for this week's show. Josh Allen, you can follow him right down there at Devolore, DEVOLORE. Josh, it's great that we have you on this time. I can actually ask you about what you've got coming on for just the tip. Last time
was I not on last time?
No, you left so
that's
rudely.
Right, I disappeared. That's right. I got kidnapped by EA last time. Just the tip. I'm actually gonna be posting it relatively soon because I didn't get it up earlier today. LOL. But it's called Survival Craft. It's a Minecraft clone for handheld devices. It's actually really good.
Oh, don't say that.
So
well, but here's
that
the true story. Did they end up using Minecraft in the tags?
They actually have it's part of why I picked out the game instead of just saying, oh, stupid Minecraft clone. They actually have a big old section in the description where they're like, hey, yeah, so this is basically a Minecraft clone. Go check out Minecraft. Big ups to Mojang for their thing and everything like that. They have a big old section in the description where they're pretty open and honest about that, and I can appreciate that quite a bit. So.
All right, and you guys can follow me right here at Mike Shaffnet or my new Twitter handle, I hate all the foods. Be sure to follow us right here on at Gamebreaker TV. And guys, if you have not watched After Dark live, you've got to do so that you can be a part of the conversation. We do it live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. PDT. You guys can call in, make the show happen, take it in any direction you want. As you can tell, there really are no limits on this show. It's a great show to watch live if you guys haven't already. Gamebreaker TV, make sure to check us out. Follow us on Twitter. All the crazy stuff over there, and be sure to catch all the other shows that go on all week long. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, all of the callers, for calling in. It couldn't happen without you. We'll see you next week.